Hi, welcome back to Late Open Podcast. I'm your host, Charna Cassell, and today's guest is Dr. Keesha Ewers, and she's been on before, season 4, the season finale. I encourage you to listen to that and check out her book. And we're going to have a dialogue about something that is frustrating. It doesn't get talked about enough, or at least it's starting to get talked about. 50% of our population is dealing with menopause, and only 1% of funding actually goes towards women's health and menopause specifically. I want to encourage men because you also go through not only your own process of hormonal changes at later stages in life, but if you have coworkers, sisters, mothers, daughters, partners in your life, and you're committed to those relationships, you really need to know about the whole life cycle of your relationship and their experience. And so please don't turn it off and think it's not for you. Anytime we're dealing with physical symptoms, I really see that there's important information behind the symptoms, and they're pointing towards something for us to put our attention on. I don't think it's a coincidence that menopause happens in a certain stage of life where women, if you have children, are dealing with empty nests, and there's been an exorbitant amount of energy output for most of our lifetimes. That's what we're conditioned to do. And this is a turning inward opportunity. So even though the symptoms can feel absolutely crazy making, why are they there? Some people don't have them at all. So some of this is genetic, some of this is environmental, but also it's our habits and how we have habitually lived our lives. And this is an opportunity to interrupt some of those things. And yes, for some people, simply taking hormone replacement therapy might be the solution, but there might also be a constellation of changes that we need to make. And one of them might be looking at how we can replete the ways that we live our lives and the ways that we attend to ourselves. So I look forward to any thoughts and feelings you may have about this episode. You can always reach out to me and enjoy. Welcome back, Keesha. So glad to have you. Learn how to live embodied. Your life is about to unwind. Uncover new tools and start healing. Leave trauma and tension behind. Isn't it great laid open? Let all your desires come true. How can you live laid open? Imagine yourself brand new. Imagine yourself brand new. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and it's a conversation that has been brewing more and more, at least in my social media feed. But I feel like it's, generations back, women going through menopause just have not had resources. And you offer a special vantage point, being a functional medicine doctor, a doctor of sexology, and having worked as a nurse and working with autoimmune conditions. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say on the topic of perimenopause and hormones and yeah.
Well, this is such a wonderful topic to be covering because you're right. This is something everybody goes through, whether it's naturally through age, chemically induced, surgically induced, right? That we're going to go through transitions if we live long enough with our stages of life.
Mhm.
So, maiden, matron, if we're there, and matriarch, right? Yeah. And with each of those comes a different setup in our body to match the stage of life that we're in. And there are all kinds of ways that that can get dysregulated. And we wind up having a terrible time with transitions rather than a smooth time. I'm going to be turning 60 in just a few days. actually.
Oh, happy almost birthday.
Thank you, thank you, and I went through menopause at the age of 55
Mhm.
and not one symptom.
Mm,
So I don't have insomnia, I don't have memory problems, I didn't ever have a hot flash, I
mm,
don't have vaginal dryness, so some of the things that are associated with menopause. So if you go in and see sort of like standard Western medical doctor
mhm,
or nurse practitioner that doesn't have that holistic view, will just say, "Oh, well, you're in perimenopause or you're in menopause, so therefore
mhm,
here it is. That's your symptom," right? And that actually should not be what we hear.
mm,
And so I really appreciate this conversation. And like anything else, when I was 30, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called rheumatoid arthritis,
mm,
and it felt like all of a sudden I woke up one morning and I had inflammation in my joint. I'd gained 10 extra pounds of fluid, and it was like someone had taken the batteries out of the Energizer bunny.
mhm,
It felt all of a sudden, right? And all my patients say that, like, all of a sudden I'm sick. That is never accurate.
mhm.
And so when you go through menopause, and or andropause for the male bodies, this is not different for the male body,
Yeah.
like this. So there's also a transition for that body. So when you go through that and you don't have enough fuel in your tank, I used to be a marathon runner. When you cross through that tape, it feels awful and like you trip and you fall and you injure yourself at the finish line. But if you have actually set yourself up for success a long time ago, this will not be that way.
Mm,
So we can talk about that. Like, and if you've already gone through menopause and you're having all those symptoms that we just talked about, then also that's reversible. So these are feedback mechanisms from the body, right? Vaginal dryness, low libido, memory stuff,
mhm,
insomnia,
mhm.
fatigue, mood that doesn't, that your mood's supposed to fluctuate like this. It's never supposed to go like this, right?
Right.
And so if any of those things are happening, then that's a feedback from the body saying, I would really love to have some attention from you.
Mhm.
Right? And so oftentimes instead we're quite tyrannical with our bodies and like a toddler pulling on a pant leg and saying, "Hey, hey, I need your attention." Like hopefully, just go smack. I don't want to hear from you.
Mhm.
And so you wouldn't want to do that with your body either. Like, how come you're just not behaving the way I want you to behave? Like, oh, I see you need something from me. Let me compassionately tune in with curiosity with an aim toward collaboration with you. So that's what I just want to kind of set up as ground for this conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've actually been thinking a lot about so a lot of the people in my life as well as clients are going through perimenopause. And I've had, I have clients that come to me that, because of cancer, go into
Yeah.
menopause or work with teenagers, which is always fascinating to work with both poles of kind of this huge flux of hormones and having so much compassion for young people and going like, wow, can you imagine? You look back and go, I had to go through that without all these resources that I've gained to regulate myself and bodily awareness and embodiment for over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
So just so much compassion for young people out there.
Mm. Think about the apps that track your period that like, you know, I never had. Just
Right.
awareness of the body is easier to track than it's ever been, I think, so
Yeah, definitely easier to track. And the powerlessness that you're going through as a teenager, living
Mhm.
under someone else's rule and whatever is going on in your family system and navigating all of that versus like, you know, a lot of, some women feel empowered and don't have that going on in their 40s and 50s. And yet at the same time, I've been thinking about menopause as it relates potentially to climate change. Like thinking about it as women who are very depleted in resources, like the people around them and even them taking their bodies for granted, thinking like I can just keep giving, giving, giving and not replenishing. And then the body goes, hey, You have to stop this behavior. It is time for you to focus on yourself and prioritize yourself. So I've been thinking about symptoms in those terms,
Yeah.
um, as a wake-up call.
That's the depletion I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
there are I always say there are 4 Ps with autoimmune disease,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And they apply to this. So the 4 Ps are people pleasing,
mm,
right? So you're like not keeping good boundaries with self-care and your own thoughts in an effort to manipulate and control out here so that you receive back what you want, right?
mhm,
There's a lot of energy expenditure doing that. So people pleasing, perfectionism. Oh my gosh. I'm like a recovering people pleaser and perfectionist.
mhm,
And then the poison of past pain, the
mm,
impact that trauma has. And we can talk a bit about that because trauma, right? Everybody has trauma. And trauma is just an event you go through that you do not yet have the skill set to navigate. So then
mhm,
it's depleting because it's stressful. And then the fourth one is the pitta dosha in Ayurvedic medicine, which has
mm,
more fire. So you literally have learned in order to have self-worth in the world to burn the candle at both ends and you burn out by the time you get to menopause, which then you're on fire.
mhm,
And so, in your climate change metaphor, right? It's that's happened when climate changes like that. There have been a lot of root causes and conditions that have
mhm.
made it so that this is now the reality. And that is the same in the body. A
Right.
lot of causes and conditions that have led to this point of hot flashing. And so people like I have a TEDx talk called Have You Heard from Your Libido Lately? And I did that talk because what I was saying was I had so many patients that were coming to me and saying I want to be on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, which is a huge conversation when we talk about andropause and menopause and
Mhm,
perimenopause. Is like, well, what about hormones, right?
mhm,
And one of the things I said in that talk was, I would have like people coming to me and saying, I want to be on bioidentical hormone replacement. You gave hormones to my sister, my brother, my dad, my
mhm,
mom, my friend, and my kid, and I, like, really want some of that. They're doing amazing, and then asking the question, "Well, like, why do you think you need to be on hormones?" And there are a variety of reasons. The person that says, "Well, I feel like I have cut glass in my vagina when I have intercourse," I'm like, "Yes, let's do some testing and get you set up."
mhm,
But when I ask a question that says, "Well, you say that you have low sexual desire. Do you like your partner?" And then I get tears, right? Then I'm like, well, so what's happening here? Well, they had an affair 5 years ago and I've forgiven them, but I don't really feel like having sex with them anymore. It's like, well, hormones aren't going to fix that,
mhm,
right? This is what took me back to get a doctorate. My doctoral work was to study called the Healing Unresolved Trauma Study, and out of that came the hurt model.
mm,
And what I saw was I started teasing apart, oh, half of the people, and I'm just gonna say sexual desire, we can actually make into a broader definition of just desire. So libido comes from the Latin word desire, desire, which means from the stars, which is actually your life force vitality, like the energy for creativity. You
mhm.
don't have to have sex with it. So if you're depleted and dried out, overheated, and you can't find passion in your life anymore, then what's that about? And what I found is that 50% of people roughly have had that ever since they can remember. It's called resistance to life.
Mm,
And so hormones don't, you know,
yeah.
and there are things to do with that. But then the other 50% where it's acquired, like I used to have passion and vitality for life. I've lost interest. It feels like I've cut glass in my vagina. I'm like, yes, let's work you up and see what your body does with hormones. There are so many options in there. And if you don't get rid of the byproducts, those are the things that cause cancer, not the hormone. So like you have to be worked up properly and then followed and tracked. So a lot of the discussion around hormones is not complete enough because it'll just be, well, what about the Women's Health Initiative study that said that hormones cause cancer or heart
Mm-hmm.
in women. Like we can tease that apart because that's a misreading of a study and it is not following people, men and women. Because you can be the Lance Armstrong and take a whole bunch of testosterone and only follow blood work, but not look at how you're metabolizing your testosterone and have it convert to a whole bunch of estrogen, which then
Mm-hmm.
gives you prostate or testicular cancer. And you say the testosterone did it. Well, no, it's what your body did with the testosterone. And the person that ordered it for you didn't track you. So
Mm-hmm.
that's like my public surface announcement.
Yeah. The other thing that, that there seems to be conversation around is like even the value. So some people are getting tests and then other people are like, well, depending on the day, your hormones are constantly changing. Like how accurate are these tests? And so how valuable are they to inform what you need? And you could be totally level with estradiol or estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and everything, but you still have all these symptoms.
Yeah, so it's how well you're breaking down the hormones and using them. We have these things called hormone pathways, and there are, like I said, many choices. And so sometimes I have to give like a nutrient, like let's say inositol,
Mhm.
if somebody is making estrogen out of testosterone instead of, or estrogen out of DHEA when I really want them to make testosterone out of DHEA. So I always say I have to give you a sheepdog to actually get it to go down the right chute, right?
Mm,
And so that's like in-depth testing that is not done with blood work. And
mhm,
so that's really important. Your body, what it does. And then I always run genetic when I am administering hormones for people because I need to know if you have like a phase 1 or a phase 2 liver detox pathway, single nucleotide polymorphism that inhibits your ability to then dump what the metabolites are
mhm,
of those hormones. And like I said, the harmful one is 4-hydroxyestrogen. That one is the one that puts everyone at risk for cancer. So if you're genetically not wired to be able to effectively dump that through your kidneys, your liver, and out into the toilet,
mm,
then we have to again give some assistance with like a couple supplements with that to encourage, right, it to go.
mm,
I'm one of those people. I build up for hydroxyestrogen like it's nobody's business. And then we have all these estrogen mimicking chemicals. I have these big
mm,
windows right here. That's what I'm pointing to outside. And that, they're being dumped into the environment, into the air, water, and soil daily by the ton.
mm,
And so I don't have to be on estrogen to have a buildup of 4-hydroxyestrogen metabolite, and that will cause hot flashes,
mm,
right? So you could have a toxic burden overload of what looks like estrogen to your body and not genetically be wired to be able to dump it. And now it's just from breathing the air
mm,
that you're having this trouble, not because you're even on estrogen. Now you add exogenous estrogen, like in a patch or a pellet or
mm,
orally or the cream or intravaginally, and then it compounds the problem you already have. And lo and behold, you are in an autoimmune or cancer risk.
mm.
Yeah.
And so for someone who like you, like what did you do if you're already so susceptible and you're taking that in? How do you prevent that?
Every 6 months, I do the testing that I use on my patients,
Mhm,
and then I take a supplement for the rest of my life. The first time I ran the test that I do for testing,
mm,
I was not on estrogen. I hadn't even entered perimenopause. And, went into the lab. The medical director of the lab called me and said, "Dr. Ewers, are you on anything hormonally?" And I said, "You didn't
mm,
put it in your paperwork." I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "I have never seen somebody with a higher level of 4-hydroxyestrogen metabolite. This is a huge cancer risk." And I said, "I've always been an overachiever." That and she started laughing and she said, "This is actually saying something. We're an international lab and I have never seen someone hit this bar." So I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to know this." And, breast cancer is all through my family. Autoimmunity, I'd already had it. It's in my family. I was able to reverse it. So knowing this then, I put the sheepdog supplements inside me every day and have now for 15 years.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I am on currently on bioidentical hormone replacement. The
Mhm.
second I went through menopause,
Yeah.
I was like all balanced, right? Because I do this testing. I provide my body with what it needs to support my genetics and the
Mhm.
environment I live in. It's just ubiquitous now. Doesn't matter if you eat organic and you use all clean skincare and hair care things. I do.
Yeah.
But just breathing on our planet now, we
Mhm.
have it. It's in our water table, right? I have
Mhm.
water filters. I mean, I do everything, air filters that I tell my patients to do, and it's just so ubiquitous now.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
So many thoughts. I'm like, I can see all the threads and I'm trying to decide which to follow. Because one of the things that you brought up is how there's cancer and autoimmune in your family. And I also know from your book and from meeting you previously, the conversation around trauma and sexual trauma. And so I'm very interested in epigenetics and 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 our ability to shift things for ourselves, but also what we used to conceive of as like, oh, this is genetic, right? But it's like, oh,
Yeah.
what's actually in our environment? How are our belief systems impacting us? And also how trauma, because of its connection to cortisol and all the things, and you'll be able to explain it better than I can, but how trauma impacts our hormones.
Yeah, it's really huge, and it's a great question. So, the way that if you just, like, put the image in your mind of a zebra being chased by a lion and you think you're about to get eaten for dinner, the way that the zebra and the human and the lion are actually designed is that if you believe that your survival is threatened, that zebra's digestive system is gonna shut down completely because there's a lion on its tail. It's not safe to stop and poop or pee, right? So you can't, like, stop and empty your detoxification organs right now. You have to, like, clamp everything up, move towards survival as fast as you can. So when your digestion shuts down, also the way that you utilize your hormones changes. So you have perception, right? This is not brain. This is actually mind. Mind and brain are not the same thing. So you have perception. Oh, there's a lion on my tail. I may not survive the next 5 minutes. So that perception activates the part of the brain that says, the limbic system, we're in trouble. That then sends a message to the adrenal glands that says cortisol out there so that we have the ability to fight, flee, or freeze, right? Our sympathetic nervous system arousal. And with that, everything that would ordinarily pregnenolone, DHEA, choline, all of the nutrients that would ordinarily make your sex and reproductive hormones get hijacked and
Hmm.
taken over to make cortisol only. Because right now, it's not safe to reproduce anymore, but it's safe to go to the bathroom. And so it's like, I can't keep you alive. I'm not going to let you put another being I have to keep alive. Right. So then all sex reproductive hormones get transferred over to emergency only hormone, which is cortisol. And so problem with this is the zebra, once it's safe, within 10 minutes will come back into a homeostatic balance and graze peacefully, while the lion pride is within vision eating the weakest of that herd. And they're like, biologically, they know physiologically that this little pride over here that's chewing on their herd member is going to be good for at least a week. And they can actually graze now completely calmly in sight of their predator. Totally fine. Humans don't do that. This is called heart rate variability. Your willingness and ability to resume a homeoallostatic go towards reproduction. Your digestive system can come back online, and then you can go about your job, your life, right, in a way that says, "I'm safe."
Mm,
If you have a perception up here, constantly looking to see if you are safe, right? "Oh, I'm a highly sensitive person, and I've been hurt before by those toxic narcissists out there, so I'm always on alert for that. Am I okay? Am I gonna be held okay? Are people keeping me safe?" Then that means that, and this is shown in fMRI scan, that your prefrontal cortex will shrink. This is your adult executive function of your brain. And the right side of your amygdala, which is the like child limbic system,
mm,
reptilian brain, is going to grow in volume. And when you keep doing that, and here's another, in my doctoral work, I found this study that was so compelling.
mm,
Like, oh my gosh. It was a study that was done on people that have filled out a perceived stress inventory.
mm,
And that's the one that everyone's seen that says, in the last year, have you gotten married? Have you lost your job? Have you gotten a job? Have you gotten divorced? Have you had a baby? Have you moved? Right? Those things, those life things.
mhm,
One of the questions on there is, do you consistently see yourself as overwhelmed?
mm,
This is a perceived stress scale, right? It showed that people, it didn't matter how many of those life in stressful inventory items that they said yes to, overwhelm was the biggest one
mm,
that actually shrink the prefrontal cortex. It acts just like somebody that's been in a war, PTSD, sexual trauma, domestic violence. It actually behaves the same way in changing your brain architecture and your hormones
mhm.
to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I do not ever have one patient that comes to see me that does not report themselves as chronically overwhelmed.
And I just have to I want to continue on this thread, but I'm just thinking, oh my God, what kind of hormonal mess is all of the United States going to be in,
I know.
given the amount of overwhelm that people are already feeling
I know.
this
It's
first
what I
month?
try and point out. I'm in grad school right now. I'm getting my master's in divinity. And I'm like, here's a place where you would think
Yeah.
that you could go through an election and the people have the tools. My professors are coming unglued.
Yeah.
You know, they can't even start out a lecture without some commentary about the election.
Mm.
I'm just like, wow, nowhere are there people that I'm seeing like in the
Yeah.
halls of a place that I would think there would be more resilience. No. So I feel like I'm sort of like Isaiah on the wall in the Bible, just kind
Mhm.
of saying, look, everybody, election cycles come and go. It is
Mhm.
really important that you pay attention to your own thoughts. Quit worrying about what's going on out here and come back in here and have good boundaries with your thoughts,
The
right?
one thing I wanted to mention about the heart rate variability, I was part of a study that it's like during these meditations for 24 hours, I wore a, a monitor,
Mhm.
right? And so this remarkable thing of being able to be in multi hours of meditation and maintain heart rate variability. Yet, what the monitor showed was I couldn't go to sleep. Like my sleep, my tendency, I'm such a light, vigilant sleeper because of childhood trauma that it was like slow, 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 slow descent. And I was actually asleep for maybe 15 minutes before it was, time to wake up. But it's a plug for meditation
Mm,
because that was something that put even a vigilant nerve, habitually vigilant nervous system into a state of heart brain coherence.
yeah, resilient.
Yeah, I was, like, really replenishing my system,
Mhm.
and so I love that you're adding, a master's in divinity to the mix because it feels like such an essential piece to me
Yeah.
to be able to have that spiritual perspective, especially when you're dealing with this, like, the physical body and what we go through and the
Mhm.
stories if we can get stuck in those loops versus being the capacity to see things from a different vantage point.
Yeah.
So much.
You can
So,
feel it
yeah.
in your system if you if you feel inside that you're contracted, and it'll be tight, tight gut, tight shoulders, tight jaw, tight guarding over your heart, just like tight, that's always fear and child based.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's not bad. You can just have it be a feedback like, oh, how old do I feel right now? I'm definitely in a child space of vigilance. And my child parts are not supposed to be the ones running the show. I need to make sure they're safe inside the cavern of my heart, bring them in, right? And then bring my older, wiser self, either the age I'm at right now or one that I can visualize that's even got more wisdom than me, forward to lead into the world. And so that's going to be felt as expansive openness, which can contain the complexities of life, not the black and white, this is right or this is wrong, but like complexity, right? Children can't do complexity. So that expansive, open holding, creating a container for that is unconditional love. That's compassion. That's wisdom. And you'll be able to feel the difference,
Mm-hmm.
how they show up inside of your system. And one of them will create a risk for epigenetic diseases, and the other one doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of them will keep your hormones depleted and constantly being hijacked and your digestive system whacked out. The other one won't.
What you just described is really core for being able to give consent. Making choices in your life, knowing what you want, knowing what you don't want. And it's like being able to track your embodied sensations is something that is just like daily when I'm sitting with my clients, helping them start to just pay attention to, because with trauma, as you know, you often leave your body or you numb out. It's like you could have all the sensations if you're home, but if you're not in your body, you can't feel what's going on and know what your body's saying yes to and what your body's saying no to.
It's a smart thing. Like the wise mind of the child that learned to leave their body. Well done, little
Mm-hmm.
one. My
Mm-hmm.
10-year-old self that was sexually abused in a vice principal's office in elementary school. Well done. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
stay in that body. Right? Very good. And then now I can leave it if I want to,
Mm-hmm.
and I can come back when I want to be. Right? So I
Mm-hmm.
love astral traveling at night. It's like these aren't bad things,
Yeah,
disassociate,
totally.
but you want to be in charge.
Yes. I'm a total fan of teaching people how to what I call choicefully dissociate. It's like I have clients who come in, they're like, okay, I need to go away for a minute before we're present. And then I go and they're like, okay, I can come back. Yeah.
And there are different energy systems and patterns, and the more
Mhm.
air you have in you, the more that's actually a really beautiful thing to do to leave,
Mhm.
because you get to go into the realm and bring back all this beautiful, magical wisdom that comes from other dimensions of time and space,
Mm.
right? I was at 10 talking to angels. So, it's like that's because I have a lot of air in me.
Mm.
An earth person is going to like hunker into the earth and endure. And then that grounding stability will be the positive side of that. The negative will be disassociating into the ground, like,
Mhm.
ooh, stuckness, right? And you can actually bring in those different energy shifts for yourself with choice. Oh, I think I need more earth here. I need to
Mm.
get more grounded. Ooh, I'd like a little bit more air. I
I
want to
lo
play with the fairies right now.
I love that. Can you also speak to water and fire?
So water is codependence in the shadow. It's like, I'm not okay if you're not okay. People pleasing, love me. I'll take care of you. I have a lot of water in me, and had to heal the shadow aspect of that.
Mhm.
And so then the positive part is I have 4 children, and I am very maternal. And so it's that maternal, loving, nurturing, nourishing energy that, it's like, "Oh, I wanna be super present with you. How do you need to be supported right now?" Right? And that's that ability to attune, to be there with that emotional depth and stability, empathy, without having to fix it, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And fire.
And then fire is the transformation energy. And so fire people that are mainly fire say that vulnerability is weakness. Can't have tears, it's weak. Can't be vulnerable, it's weak. I have to always be seen as strong. And so the shadow aspect of that will be, anger, lots and lots of it. And it'll be a pushing away of anything that feels dangerous. And so it's called Christ consciousness, like the white Christos is male and the red Christos is feminine. It's the Dakini energy. And it's that fire transforming trauma into wisdom. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's passion.
Yeah, I'm all water, fire, and air over here. I like a little more earth. I'd like a little more.
We tend to be attracted to people that have earth and
Oh yeah,
like that. It's like, ooh, I love you, ground me.
I call it like tree trunk men,
Yeah.
like hunker down. Except for the tricky thing is the part of you that likes to transformation and change and movement gets very frustrated
And
by
they're
the
very
hunt.
slow to
Yeah.
digest things, slow to process. Yeah.
Totally. It's such a common dynamic I see in the couples that
Mhm.
I work with is like the, you know, action as a survival strategy versus the hunkering down. I call it like armadillo energy.
Right.
I would like to do a 180, completely change what we're talking about and come back to something that I think is important information for folks listening around the difference between. So, right, so there's patches, there's pellets, there's
Mm.
shots, there's creams, there's
Mhm.
external creams, there's internal creams,
There's
and
synthetic and there's bioidentical.
exactly. And so, and depending on your symptoms, like I tend towards migraines, and I recently found out uh, that doing the cream is not good, what I heard, because it's releasing all at once versus like a slow release. So that changes in hormone fluctuations in hormones can also contribute to migraines. So I would love to hear some of your thoughts about these different things. And of course, it's hard because, we're all different and we have different needs. But when people are considering one over the other, what are some things to think about?
I first want to drop in on the migraine thing. There's a gene. Have you had your genetics done?
I have not.
You might want to do that with me.
Yeah, I would
There's
love.
a gene. That's what I
Definitely.
call
Yeah.
the migraine gene.
Mm,
And it's called the MAO, monoamine oxidase SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism. And when people carry that, then they are more susceptible to the hormone fluctuations. And it isn't about the hormones, it's
mm,
about the SNP of not being able to actually break down the particular neurotransmitter,
mm,
which is activated and made compounded, so much worse if you have this SNP
mm-hmm,
by something called tyramine in food. So
mm,
tyramine,
mm-hmm,
you can't break down if you have this MAO SNP, and tyramine is present in all foods that are aged and fermented.
mm.
Alcohol, yogurt, kimchi, kombucha, all migraine activators with that SNP. So there's a lot more to this picture when you throw in the word migraine.
Right.
I want to just tell our audience that there's so much more than hormones,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
As migraines have a whole bunch of different other root causes. So, and hormones play into it for sure because
Mm-hmm,
people that are migrainous notice in their cycle that there are times when it's worse, right? And so then
mm-hmm,
different applications of hormones, to your point, can make things worse. So, coming back to your question around just hormones, how do we differentiate and make our choices? It does very much depend because I like to do testing first and see what's going on with somebody. And I include genetics with that because what I want to know is if you have a hard time, like we mentioned earlier, with genetically having potentially a problem to get rid of excess hormone metabolites, it's going to matter what I offer for delivery.
mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it's going to matter how I track you to make sure that is actually working because all we're working on at first is theory. Like, because you have this, then this is the potential that we always test, don't guess. So I'm going to give you this. And then this little compound that we've created that matches your testing and your genetics and your symptomology and your lifestyle and your request for how you want it to work into your life. And then we're going to come back and we're going to test to make sure your body's doing good things with it.
Mhm.
Okay. And then we might make adjustments. It may be like, oh, you know what? Pellets are probably not a great idea for you. I actually happen to like intravaginal use if somebody
Mhm.
has intravaginal symptoms. Like, why give somebody, and I never give oral,
Mm.
ever. The liver hates hormone replacement therapy.
Mm.
And so I will avoid oral use at all costs because it creates two passes through your liver to
Mm.
take it orally. And so liver is already something that it's a very forgiving organ of detoxification. But when I look at genetics, I often see that if people have little mystery issues, that they've got a liver problem.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I want to support the liver, and I also want to make sure that I'm not aggravating it, right? Yeah. So the way that you make that decision is based on, I always say we each of us is a unique puzzle. So it's going to be based on your symptoms, your lifestyle, where the things are occurring. So do we need to give you estrogen just because of bone density? That's going to be different than if we're doing it because you also have vaginal dryness.
Mhm. And so one of the things also, I know not a lot of people who are on patches, for instance, it's like that's what their doctors offer. It would be
Yes.
amazing. What a different world it would be if we had doctors like you across the board, right? That were
Yeah.
looking at the whole picture. But
Oftentimes the provider will learn a system. And then that, they always say, like, if you have a hammer, you're looking for a nail, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But then also it's estradiol or estrogen and progesterone and testosterone is left out.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is I haven't come across any. I don't think insurance covers testosterone from what I could see. It's
I
basically not
know.
like I haven't met I haven't talked to anyone whose insurance actually covers it. And so there are all these separate companies that are now it's like out of pocket if you want to get any
I
form of
actually do not take
testosterone.
insurance
Mhm.
because the kind of testing and individualization that I utilize is not paid for by insurance. You have to think about the insurance paradigm. I'm not calling it bad. I will never diss Western medicine. If I have a heart attack, if I have symptoms of the stroke, you can bet I am in the first Western medical emergency room,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's my background is there. It is fantastic medicine for acute care,
Mhm.
but not
Yeah.
for actually diving under symptoms.
Mm-mm.
Why is the symptom here not match the drug with the symptom? Insurance pays for that. So if you're having hot flashes and you go to somebody that takes insurance, they're going to look for something that gets rid of your hot flash, not at how well you're using the estrogen and how well you're getting rid of the metabolites. Insurance doesn't pay for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't pay for the genetics component. I tried for a really long time to do the paired, like my model of medicine and fit it into the Western model. And I took insurance.
Mhm.
And then one year I got charged back by the insurance company 20 grand. It almost put me under. And what they said in their letter, it was just like this letter out of the blue
Mhm.
that here are these 6 patients they had audited. And in those patients, I had not prescribed one medication. But in each of the 6 patients they chose, I had reversed cerebral ataxia. I
Mhm.
had reversed type 2 diabetes. I had reversed 2 autoimmune diseases. I had helped someone with Hashimoto's go into, like, their autoimmune markers to 0, and that didn't matter. The way that their little algorithm is set up is doesn't
Yeah.
matter about that. So, it was so frustrating, and I said, "I can't
No,
try to, like, have this model and fit it into this one. Those 2 don't go together."
it's maddening.
And insurance companies, the way I mean, you can't be mad about it because it's like it's a gambling paradigm. So they gamble on you paying a premium and them not having to pay out. So if you really get it, then you're not going to be mad about it. Like, okay, that's actually the model. They've never, ever been anything but transparent about that,
Mm.
right? Insurance companies have never said our objective is for health.
Right.
They want to make money.
But so if you come back to so like pellets, patches, testosterone, it feels like there's much less information because people are just going to their doctor and getting a patch and being like, okay, I'm all better. There's so much less information about testosterone and how women can get that if they're having certain symptoms that show a decrease in testosterone. And
Yeah,
I'm
so testosterone, is not a panacea for everything. No hormones are, but it's necessary. And so I use topical testosterone on my clitoris.
Mhm.
So I have intravaginal biased that I use, and I have topical testosterone in a separate tube that I use clitorally because it helps to enhance sensation. And so I absorb testosterone through my clitoris and I absorb my estrogen through my vaginal wall
Mhm.
just to prevent any dryness. It's
Yeah.
how I prefer taking it. And I use progesterone on my wrist at night. And that's what I do. And that works for me, but I actually order like pellets for some people and I do patches for other people and it just really depends on the person.
And is doing pellets the only way to get bioidentical hormones, or is
No.
so the cream can be bioidentical, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
compounding pharmacy can put it in anything.
Okay.
You can get biased with hyaluronic acid if you have bad pH that keeps having yeast infections after you go through menopause. Obviously, you have to change your diet, and I do GI testing to make sure that you don't have an overgrowth of fungus in your gut, and you have to, like, stop drinking alcohol
Yeah.
and eating sugar and drinking coffee, right, when you go through menopause. That's just like, please do those things. Hormones don't cure any of the harm caused by those.
Mm.
Don't drink, please, alcohol and caffeine, and don't eat sugar. You will have that's why I don't have any hot flashes, right? You will have such a better life. And so then you can use hormone and it will actually, depending on what's going on, right?
Mhm.
Help.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you can get bioidentical hormones, like all of mine are bioidentical that I give to my patients. Yeah. I can do it in an oil base right here
Yeah.
as a wrist administration or behind the knees. I can do a cream. I can do kind of I call it the magic face cream,
Mm.
but I also I get my estrogen that way with a prescription retinol base. And that's what I use that on my face and in my vagina.
Mhm. Mhm. It's so, what I hear from a lot of people, and I could get as if I was a listener listening and being like, "Oh my God, where do I start?" Because
That's the
it's a
thing.
mystery.
It really isn't. It's only a mystery if you haven't asked your body what it wants. Then it's a mystery because it's like I always tell people you can have an apple
Yeah.
and you can study the apple. You can play with the apple, juggle the apple, become an expert at apple, a scholar on apple. You can be an artist and paint apple. But until you
Mhm.
actually bite the apple, you don't get any of the nourishment from the apple. You actually have to do it, right? And
Mhm.
so the
Mhm.
testing is asking the body what it needs right now. So I've changed the way that I do my personal hormone replacement
Mhm.
over time, depending on what's going on and how my body's responding.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
not one thing that you stick to. You constantly come back and ask your body, "So how's this? How can I support you?"
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to whole separate conversation, but using your body as a pendulum, being able to actually tune in on a daily basis and see what is gonna nourish you, and in terms of
Mhm.
supplements, in terms of food, in terms of all the things. And so for people who don't have I mean, I know I was having momentary period of intense hot flashes as a trauma response
Mhm.
after something that happened last year, and completely reversed them through exercise and diet and taking a few, like, magnesium and certain supplements, that it was like full on and then completely gone and
Mhm.
hasn't returned, right?
Mhm.
So what are some ways, if people don't have an abundant financial resources to do all the testing, that they can begin to address and tune into what their body might need related to these hormone changes?
When it comes to tuning in, like I had said before, if you will, you know what foods cause inflammation, and alcohol's not a food and caffeine is a drug. And so if you can really get that, like, oh, those are not food, that's not nourishing me, it's going to cloud everything if you're ingesting those things. So anything that can cause inflammation, like sugar
Mm-hmm.
and caffeine and alcohol, then it will be hard. You can't actually use your body as a pendulum. It's going to be toxic. So it'll be tough to be able to say, like, if you're drinking alcohol and then you're having hot flashes and take magnesium, that's kind of like being a bad diabetic. I'm on insulin, so I can have the Snickers bar. Over time, that catches up to you. So the way to really tune in is to watch your tongue. If you stick it out and you look at the back of it, if it has a coating on there, then your liver is backed up. You might have fatty liver. And when that's happening, like first order of business is the liver detox. Okay. That affects your hormones. Like it's one of the things that affects your hormones the very most is how well
Mm-hmm.
your liver is operating. If you look at your lines on your face, so like when I go like this, you can see these lines here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important not to put fillers and Botox in your face because that also will affect your hormones. Taking um, appetite suppressant drugs will also affect your thyroid and your hormones. So first and foremost is what are you putting in and on your body? That would be first,
Mm-hmm.
rather than here's how to control the symptom of a hot flash,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A number one thing. Um, Listen to the signs. Like, is your urine clear? Like light straw colored? Does it have an odor? Do you have a vaginal odor? Do you have a any kind of vaginal drainage? What do your stools look like? Do they look like a brown banana every day and they're easy to pass? You don't have to wipe very much and you're not on the toilet for more than 2 minutes. Two of those a day. Okay. So is your body weight within your BMI, is it healthy? These are all things that will affect your hormone balance. And they're all things that have to do with the choices you're making in your lifestyle before we ever even reach the discussion of what to take. And that doesn't cost you anything. And in fact, it saves you money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Walking. I walk 15,000 to 20,000 steps a day. A day. Rain or shine. It is one of the very best things for my hormones because, like, lymphatic system, my lymphatic drainage happens without a problem. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm 60, I have no joint pain, I'm on no med, like, it's walking in the forest every single day of my life, it has been the biggest long-term health choice that I have made,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
In addition
Absolutely.
to healing my sugar addiction and, like I said, like, the things that I'm talking about are free.
Mm-hmm.
I get very interested and curious when people say, "Well, out-of-pocket testing is too much, I can't afford it." I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about, like,
Mm-hmm.
do you buy coffee every day?" All I
Mm-hmm.
Are you sedentary? Like, what's the cost of this on you, And so this is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to wrap us up. Thank you so much. And is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with? And I also want to make sure that people can find you.
Yeah, I think, one of the other things that when you're talking about hormones, I would say read Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle because it really helps you understand the feedback mechanisms of your body, like how to read your tongue, how to read your fingernails, how to read your sweat and what it smells like, how to read the lines on your face, how to read your eyes. All of these things are actually like communication to you from body, letters that maybe you have left unopened, return to sender for your whole life. And in the book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, it really gets you into that, like, oh, how do I get really curious about what my body's been trying to tell me? That actually, you know, that's miles ahead of taking hormones, and again, not expensive at all to learn how to do that, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would leave that because really learning you and you are not even your sister or your mother or like you're your friend. You are not anyone but you. You're unique. And solving the autoimmune puzzle really points you to that. Like you are a puzzle and learning how to put that health puzzle together based on you. It's really important.
Yes, thank you. And what's your social media, your website?
drkeesha.com, drkeesha.com. And then TikTok and Instagram, it's also, Dr. Keesha Ewers.
EWERS, and it'll all
Right.
be on the show notes. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. I so appreciate your time.
Thank
Getting
you. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for joining us. If you appreciated this episode, please like, rate, and review and share with your friends. I'd really appreciate that. If you'd like to stay connected, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Late Open Podcast. If you go to charnacassell.com, you can sign up for my newsletter. You'll get discounts and learn about different resources in each newsletter. And at passionatelife.org, you can read more about the work that I offer and my particular approach to healing. This has been Late Open Podcast with your host, Charna Cassell. We all have different capacities, but I believe in our capacity to grow and change together. Until next time.